Hi, this is Rabbi Tzvi Mandel of Congregation Kalbnei Yisrael, community of Jewish friends, and tonight, Tuesday night, Yom Gimel Pashas B'Shalach. Today was Tuesday Pashas B'Shalach, so those who read the Chumash twice and the Targum once on the Mun, it's brought down from the great Naftali Rebshitzer. I think that it's a segula for Parnasa. So we shall have Parnasa Tov v'Achava. We shall have a good Parnasa, means of living, and everything that we need to worship Hashem with much joy. We will continue first with the Megillah. Just want to add to what we studied yesterday. We studied the whole first chapter of Megillah. So I want to tell you something very beautiful from the Chassam Sofer. The Holy Chassam Sofer says as follows. When Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, the Talmud says in Zvachim 116a that the nations of the world came to Bilam and they said, what is going on? Thunder and lightning, and all the animals stop what they're doing, and everyone is, flattered by what's going on, and the Jewish people around this mountain, and what's going on? Is Hashem bringing another flood to the world as He did in the beginning of creation? Hashem Lamabel Yashav, and Bilam, their prophet, their ugly, impure prophet, answered to them, Hashem Hashem is giving His people strength and peace. Things that seemingly would be opposite reactions, but the Jewish people are strong and they are peaceful. This is what He answered them. Now, we know when Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Torah, when Moshe gave the Torah, so Hashem wanted him to give it on the 6th, and He added a day, so it was given on the 7th, and this is what the Gemara speaks about in Tractate Shabbos 87a. So the Chassam Sofer says as follows. We say every day at the end of the Shemona Esrei service, 3 times a day at least, bless us, our Father that loves us so much, all of us as one, in the light of your face, Ar Panecha. That doesn't mean anything physical, obviously, it's a very high level, Ar Panecha, the light of Hashem, because in the light of your face, you have given us, Hashem our God, 7 things. Teres Chaim, the study of life, how to live life, V'havas Chesed, how to love doing kindness to others, Tzedakah, charity, bracha, a blessing, V'rachmim, having mercy, Chaim, and life, V'shalom, and peace. Now, these 7 levels, we should call them, are the 7 kailos, the voices that are described also by King David in the Mizmor Dov that we say Friday night when we receive the Eilik Shabbos Kodesh. So the Chassam Sofer says as follows. When the Jewish people came out of Egypt, each day of the 6 days that they were going to receive the Torah, 6 days of Sivan, Hashem told them that the Torah will be given on the 6th day, is a pipeline for each one of these 7 blessings. So the 6 days were of the first 6, but Moshe, which Hashem stopped at Chaim Tovim, a good life, but Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, we have to add 1 more day for the pipeline of peace. There should be peace between the Jewish people. And Rashi says in Chumash that in Vayikra 26, Rashi says if there's no peace, then there's nothing. Ein shalom, ein klum. Same thing Rashi says in Chumash by when Hashem gave us Israel, the land of Israel, and the Sati Shalom Ba'aretz. Now, the nations of the world, when they saw that Hashem is not giving the Torah on the sixth day, so they thought that Hashem will destroy the world as he did in the beginning of the world by bringing a flood. And to this, the prophet Bilam realized, but there's one thing more that the Jewish people have, that Moshe Rabbeinu gave them, that Hashem consented to the seventh day, which is the peace between them, and this is something very special. And the nations of the world would never even think of this, and it took the prophet Bilam to explain this to them. Now, remember that we'll see later in the Megillah that Haman complains to Achashverosh that Yeshnei Am Echad, is this one nation, Mefayzah Mefur Ben Am, that's spread out between all the nations, and they are the ones that never listen to anything that the king says. But the Chazal say that it means something else as well. Haman complained that there's one nation, meaning that their whole existence and what they are special more than any other peoples of the world is that they have this oneness, that they're united, which is the blessing we just learned that Moshe Rabbeinu gave them, both on Mount Sinai and when Hashem gave the Torah, and also when Hashem gave them Israel. So the thing is that Haman said that their whole thing is being one, and meanwhile they're separate. Everyone has something to say. As you know, the Jewish people are like that. Sometimes it's in a positive way, sometimes it's not. But Haman complained about this Achashverosh, that they don't have oneness. For this reason, the great tzaddikus Esther Hamalka, Esther the queen, said, "Leis k'noisas es kol Yehudim, take together all the Jewish people," she tells Mordechai, "and then there'll be peace and oneness between them." Now, there's one more piece to this. We know that when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, when Moshe was born, the house got filled with light, as the Talmud says in Saita Yud Beis 12, and Rashi and Chumash says this, and this light was the light of Hashem's face, as we say in Shemona Esrei, Ba'ar Panecha, the all-encompassing light that has all these 7 levels. So from the 7th day of Adar that he was born, every day another one of these channels came in, Teres Chaim, Abbas Chesed, until on the 7th day, which is the 13th day of Adar, was peace. And that was the day that she said it should be the day of the Jews coming together, Yom Kippur Lakol. Okay, we'll go further to another piece over here of the Chassam Sofer, which is verse 4 that we studied yesterday. Verse 4 reads as follows: For 180 days the king showed off his treasures and the greatness of his kingdom. We said the treasures were the stolen gold and silver that Nebuchadnezzar took from the temple, from the Beis HaMikdash, and this was shown off by the party. The Talmud says in Megillah 12a that Oishe Kavod Malchusei, the richness of the honor of his kingdom, Yikar Tiferes Gedulasai, and the beauty of his greatness, refers to the clothes of the high priest. As the Chumash says in Shmos 28b, that the Kavod Tiferes, the clothes of the high priest, are referred to as honor and beauty. Now, so why is the Megillas Esther telling us that specifically he wore the clothes of the high priest when he used all the utensils of the temples. So there must be something in the clothes of the high priest that was a special audacity, that was a special chutzpah, for lack of any other words. So he says something very beautiful. Aaron HaKohen, the high priest, was so pure and so holy in his midas, in his character, between man and Hashem. He was so pure and always repenting and doing tshuva, as Chazal teach us. And he was always so special between making peace and loving people, man and wife, or friends, or whatever it is. He was so special in that way. And midas, good character, is called a lavush, clothes, because that's who the person really is. The Talmud says that the person's clothes are what give him honor, meaning that his midas and his character is what really speaks up for him, and that's who he really is. So Aaron HaKohen was Tiferes and was covered because that's who he really was. It wasn't just a show. So then the clothes, in a way, were being honored by being on him, as opposed to evil Achashverosh. The clothes were his honor because it was all external. Inside, he wasn't honorable. He wasn't the one that should be wearing these clothes. So it's for this reason that the Torah specifically that speaks about these articles of the Holy Temple, besides all the other utensils of the Beis HaMikdash that were being used at the party. Okay, we shall start the second chapter of Megillas Esther. King Achashverosh was sorry that he had Queen Vashti killed. Verse 1. After all this happened, King Achashverosh calmed down and was no longer angry. He remembered Vashti, what she had done, and how she had been punished. After King Achashverosh had Vashti killed, he was so sorry about what he had done and was upset at those who had said to kill him. Verse 2, the young servants of the king then said to him, let beautiful girls be found for the king. Verse 3, the king should appoint officers in every country in his kingdom who will gather together all the young pretty girls to Shulchan, the capital. They will be put in the harem under the care of Haggai, the king's servant in charge of the women, and they will be given makeup. Verse 4, and the girl that the king likes best will become queen and take Vashti's place. The king was happy with this advice, and he did what they said. Mordechai raised Esther in his home from the time she was a young girl. Now, the next verse is read aloud, first by the congregation and then by the reader the night of the reading of the Megillah and the day of the reading of the Megillah on the holiday of Purim. Number 5, there was a Jewish man in the capital city of Shushan, whose name was Mordechai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimi, the son of Kish. He was from the tribe of Binyamin. Now Mordechai was a member of the Sanhedrin, the high court of the Jews. Esther's father, Avichail, died before she was born. Her mother died as she was born. Mordechai adopted her when she was a young girl. Some sages say that her name was really Esther, but that she was called Hadassah because she was like a myrtle twig, a Hadassah. Myrtle smells nice, but is bitter to eat. Esther was nice to Mordechai, but was bitter to Haman. Other sages say that her name was really Hadassah, but she was called Esther because Esther is similar to Hester, which means hidden. Her family was hidden from people since she did not tell them she was Jewish, as we'll see later on. Every country claimed she was one of theirs. She was so beautiful and so special that they all wanted to be the country that she came from, so to say. In most places, verse 5, which is what we just read, is said aloud by everyone, and then it's repeated by the person who's reading the Megillah. This is done with several verses that show how the Jews were saved. It shows our joy. Now, verse 6. He had been made to leave Yerushalayim together with the Jews who left with King Yechaniah. They had been forced to leave by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Remember Nebuchadnezzar. Verse 7. Mordechai had a cousin named Hadassah, who was also called Esther, as we just learned. That is two views as to which was her real name and which was just like a nickname, so to say. He raised her because she did not have a father or mother. She was very beautiful. When her parents died, Mordechai raised her as his own daughter. Number 8. When people heard about the king's command, and many young girls were brought to Shulchan, the capital, in the care of Haggai, Esther was also taken to the palace. She was taken care of by Haggai, the guard of the women. Haggai liked Esther and wanted to be good to her. He rushed to make sure she got her cosmetics and her meals, and he brought her 7 maids from the palace. He changed the rooms of Esther and her maids to the best rooms in the harem. Number 10, Esther told no one that what her nation was, or about her family, because Mordechai told her not to. Now, Esther used a different maid for each day of the week. This way she was able to keep track of when it was Shabbos. The maids who saw Esther on weekdays did not realize that she rested on Shabbos. The maid who came only on Shabbos saw Esther resting all day and not doing any work. She assumed that this was what Esther did every day. This way no one suspected Esther was Jewish. Mordechai hid Esther because he did not want her to be taken to the king's palace. When officers told Achashverosh that Esther was not among the girls, he ordered that any girl found hiding from the officers would be killed. Now, we're up to verse 11. Every day Mordechai walked past the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was doing and to see what was happening to her. While at the palace, Esther got special food so that everything she ate was kosher. Verse 12. Every girl had her turn to come before King Achashverosh after receiving beauty treatments for 12 months. For 6 months they were treated with oil of myrrh, and for 6 months they were treated with perfumes and cosmetics. Verse 13. The girl was then brought to the king. She was given anything she asked for to take along with her to the king. Verse 14. She would come in the evening, and in the morning she would be brought to a second harem under the care of Shashkas, the king's servant, who guarded the king's wives. The girl was never allowed to go to the king again unless he called for her by name. After being taken to the king, these girls were never allowed to marry anybody else, even if the king never wanted to see them again. Okay. We'll finish this paragraph, and then we'll go back to the commentaries. Number 15. And when it was the turn of Esther, the daughter of Mordechai's uncle Avichail, whom Mordechai had adopted as his own daughter, to come before the king, she asked for nothing. She just took what Haggai, the king's servant, told her to take. Whoever saw Esther liked her. 16. Esther was brought to the palace and taken to Achashverosh. It was the 10th month, the month of Tavis, in the 7th year of the king's rule. Verse 17. The king loved Esther more than any of the other women. He favored her more than any of the other girls. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. He immediately took her as his queen. Verse 18. Then the king made a big party for all of his officers and all his servants. This was, quote-unquote, Esther's party. The king announced that none of the countries in the kingdom would have to pay taxes, and he gave out gifts that only a king is able to afford. Verse 19. All the girls of the harem were brought together for a second time, and Mordechai would sit at the king's gate. Verse 20. Esther did not tell anyone where she was born or who her people were, just as Mordechai had commanded her. Esther did whatever Mordechai said, just as she did when she was growing up with him. Now there's a couple of notes over here. Achashverosh was trying to find out what nation Esther was from. First he made a giant party, but she did not tell. Then he canceled all taxes in her honor, but she still didn't tell. Then he gave his subjects valuable gifts in her honor, but she would still not tell them. The Jews knew that Mordechai had told her not to say where she was from, so not one of them told Achashverosh or his officers either. Here are some of the reasons why Mordechai did not want anyone to know that Esther was Jewish. Number one, if Esther was chosen as queen, it must be that Hashem was using her to save the Jewish people. Achashverosh would not have chosen her if he had known that she was Jewish. Number two, if no one knew she was Jewish, it would be easier for her to follow the Torah's commandments. Number three, he did not want Achashverosh to know that she was a great-granddaughter of King Saul. He hoped Achashverosh would think she came from a simple background and therefore would not choose her to become queen. A closer look. Why were the girls gathered together after Esther was chosen? Achashverosh was upset that Esther would not tell him what nation she was from. He asked Mordechai for an idea, and Mordechai suggested that he gather the girls to see if he would pick someone else to be his queen. He told Achashverosh that this would make Esther jealous, and she might tell him where she was from. Actually, Mordechai hoped that Achashverosh would change his mind and choose another queen. Okay, we're up to 21. In those days when Mordechai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigsan and Seresh, two of the king's servants who guarded the doorway, got angry. They planned to kill King Achashverosh. 22. Mordechai found out about this plot and told Esther about it. Esther then told the king, saying she heard about it from Mordechai. Number 23. The story was investigated and they found that it was true. Bigsan and Seresh were hanged, and this story was written in the record book of the king. A closer look. Why was Mordechai at the palace gate? Because he felt that these were dangerous times for the Jewish people, and at the king's gate he would hear about any plans against the Jews. Did you know when Bigsan and Seresh plotted to kill the king, they spoke in the Tarsian language, which they thought no one in Shulchan would know. As a member of the great Sanhedrin, though, Mordechai understood all 70 languages. Bigsan and Seresh wanted to kill the king by poisoning him. This is the end of the second chapter. Now let's go over the Rashi's first, and then we'll see if there's any more commentaries on this that we want to speak about. First verse said that after all these that happened with Vashti, the king's anger went down, and he remembered about Vashti and everything that he did. It says Rashi, he remembered her beauty, and that put him in an atzvus mood. Atzvus is something no Jew is allowed to be. Atzvus is depression and feeling none worth, and feeling worthless, and feeling down, and feeling like garbage, and a Jew doesn't feel that way, right? Especially Chassidim, Simcha is the greatest thing. The great Rabban of Kalin said that there's no mitzvah to be joyous, to be b'simcha, and there's no sin to be depressed and down and out. But the mitzvahs that being joyous causes one to do. No one mitzvah could cause. Mitzvah brings another mitzvah, right? So by being joyous, we are on the right path to doing more and more mitzvahs, as opposed to the other way, when that's depressed and down and out. Who knows what they could come to in a negative way. And here the king was all ba'atzistic, all down and out. So, Ish Yehudi, verse 5. There was a Jewish person. Since he went into exile with the Galus of Yehuda, so all the people that went with Judah, with Yehuda, the kings of Yehuda, to exile were called Yehudim, between the non-Jews, even if they came from a different tribe, not Judah. Today, a Jew is called a Yehudi. Okay. Ish Yemini, he also came from the tribe of Binyamin, as Chazal teaches. He had a daughter. In other words, he took in a daughter, which she was his niece, but Chazal say that not only was she his daughter, Bas, but she became his wife. He married her. Bas and Bayis. Bayis means a home. A woman is referred to as Bayis. He told her not to say where she comes from, in order that they should say that she came from a lowly house and with Isa, and they would send her away. If they would know that she was from Shaul HaMelech, they would have held on to her. Mordechai held very strongly that since such a great righteous person, a tzaddikus like Esther, was brought to the home of this evil Achashverosh, it must be for a good reason. Talking about positive thinking, right? Of course, they did tshuva and everything, and he told the people not to go to the party, as we know later on. But he held a positive view. If Hashem, who loves us so much, put this great tzaddikus, this great special woman, in the home of such an ugly, low-down person like Achashverosh, it has to be that a Yeshua for the Yidden is going to come out of this. A salvation and help from Hashem will come through this. Therefore, he came every day in front of the palace to see what the Yeshua will be. There's no question. He had emunah and betachon. He had faith that it's going to be good for the Jews. Just wanted to see it happen already. And the other reason was, as we said before, since it was bad times, he wanted to hear anything that's going on firsthand. That's when the story with Bigson and Serge came up. What does it mean that anything that a girl wanted, she was given to come in front of the king? Says Rashi, any kind of either jokes and laughter or music that she liked, that she thought that the king might like, that was allowed and was given together with her to come to the king. The king took all kinds of women, married or unmarried. That is basically what Rashi says. Let's just see if the Chassam Sofer says something that we want to give over. Stop here, meanwhile, with the Megillah. We have to do some laws of tzitzis before we start the laws of Purim, and hopefully tomorrow night or so we'll start the laws of Purim. We're almost finished the laws of tzitzis in Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. So, we will go to 18, chapter 9, paragraph 18, and tonight we'll go through till 21, including 21, and that'll be the end of the laws of tzitzis. So tomorrow night, with God's help, we'll start the halachas of the great, beautiful, joyous holiday of Purim. And it'll be just about 30 days before Purim. Okay. 18. When a talis and its tzitzis strings are in good condition, one may not remove the tzitzis from the talis without a good reason, leaving the talis without tzitzis, as this would constitute a lack of respect for a talis that is used for a mitzvah, says the Mishnah Berurah in 15:3. If one intends to replace them, however, then it's permitted. If one wishes, this is what this paragraph is going to speak about. If one wishes to remove tzitzis from the talis so that he can tie other tzitzis on the talis that are nicer than the ones that he has on now, or because one of the fringes of the current tzitzis tassel was severed, actually the word is, and he wants to tie complete strings upon the talis, even though the current tzitzis strings are still valid, this is nevertheless permitted. This is because he is not taking off to leave the talis without tzitzis. On the contrary, he's doing it so that he can fix even nicer tzitzis strings to the talis. But when removing the tzitzis tassel to replace it, one should be careful not to dispose of the first pair in an unseemly place. Okay. Paragraph 2. Even tzitzis tassels that became invalid and were therefore removed from the talis should not be thrown directly into the garbage, because that would constitute a degradation of the mitzvah. That's a bizui mitzvah. That's an embarrassment for the mitzvah. There are those who are very stringent to store such tzitzis in a sefer, a holy book, and make out of them a bookmark for the sefer. For since a mitzvah was done with these strings one time, it is proper to have another mitzvah done with them as well. Even a talis garment that became worn and he no longer wears it for the mitzvah, even though it was not a part of the actual mitzvah itself, as were the strings, he should not use it for a degrading purpose. Okay. 20. On Shabbos, when making a knot is prohibited, one cannot fulfill the Torah's commandment to affix tzitzis to a four-cornered garment. In addition to the Torah's requirement to affix tzitzis to a four-cornered garment, there is a rabbinic prohibition against wearing such a garment even when one cannot fix the tzitzis. However, there are specific situations where the rabbinic law is waived. One such situation is described in this paragraph as we go on. If one comes on Shabbos to the synagogue and he discovers that one of the tzitzis tassels of his talis has become invalid and he cannot find any other talis to borrow, and he's embarrassed to stay in the synagogue at the time of prayers without a talis while everyone else is wearing one, then the halach is as follows. Since today it is not possible for him to tie another tzitzis tassel on the talis due to the Shabbos prohibition of tying a knot, therefore, because of the great importance of human dignity, it's called kavod habriyos, he is permitted to wear the talis even in its invalid state, since a rabbinic violation is permitted in certain circumstances to preserve human dignity. Human dignity is something very important to Chazal. This rule has specific regulations and is not to be construed as allowing violation of rabbinic commandments in every situation that may violate human dignity. If one is wearing his talis in public domain and notices that one of the tzitzis is invalid, he is required to remove the talis garment immediately. Mishnah Berurah 13:15. Okay. However, he should not recite a blessing on it. He shouldn't make a brach on it, since he is not fulfilling any mitzvah by wearing such a garment. When does this halacha apply? When he did not know before Shabbos that his talis had become invalid. But if he knew before Shabbos that it had become invalid, he is prohibited for wearing it on Shabbos, even in the synagogue. And we do not extend to him the above permit. For he should have fixed it the day before Shabbos. He should have fixed it on Friday. According to the Mishnah Berurah, if he accidentally forgot to fix it on Friday, he may be lenient and he may wear it on Shabbos. So he argues on the Kitzer. He's more lenient. 21, and this will be the final paragraph in the laws of tzitzis. If one wears a garment upon which one is required to affix tzitzis without tzitzis attached to it, he has violated the positive commandment of the Torah in Bamidbar 15:38. They shall make themselves fringes on the corners of their garments. This is true during the week when one can tie tzitzis onto the garment, as we've seen before. Okay. It is necessary to be vigilant with some garments that are made in a manner that they have four corners and are thus included in the requirement to affix tzitzis to them. If one is not going to affix tzitzis to them, he must alter them so that they no longer are four corners. To do this, it's necessary to cut one corner so it should be round, and that's not considered a corner for the wearing of tzitzis. However, cutting the corner diagonally will create two corners, making it a five-cornered garment, upon which one is required to affix tzitzis to the four corners farthest from the middle of the garment. See Shulchan Aruch 10:1-2. Okay. However, if he merely folded over the corner and sewed it down in the folded position in such a manner that it appears rounded, doesn't help. For as long as it was not cut off, the folded section is considered part of the garment. How great is the punishment for one who violates the commandment of tzitzis, but one who is scrupulous with regard to the commandment of tzitzis merits to greet the countenance of the divine presence of the Shekhinah. Very beautiful. Let's just see if the Rav Shulchan Aruch adds to these last paragraphs. That was chapter 9. In 19, the Kitzer said, the Shulchan said that even tzitzis that were made invalid and taken off from the talus, from the tzitzis clothes, you shouldn't throw it into the garbage because of embarrassing the mitzvah. And the Rav adds that someone who is stringent about it and even puts it, buries it, then it's even then he gets a special blessing. Okay, we'll stop here, and Hashem's up. Tomorrow night we'll start with laws of Purim. Let's just see if Rabbi Braun in his Sha'ar Misyan Balacha adds anything. That was chapter 9, the last couple of halachas. In paragraph 18, we learned that if someone puts on more beautiful tzitzis, then he's allowed to take off the old tzitzis because that's not considered an embarrassment. So Shamson Halacha quotes the Shaus Tshuvas Ksainas Yosef and Siman Aleph that even if it's not more beautiful, but he has another reason why he must take it off, he's already allowed to do it as long as he has a reason. The Chayadim says that if it's hard for the person we'll skip that one. Okay. Stop right here. Have a good night.